I met you in San Diego. I was providing a support service to Greg, one of your old Oregon players. He was a chef who has now followed his career.
Incredible chef too. Yeah.
He needed some support for his demo that he was doing on the road while they were playing at a festival. And I said, anything for somebody from Washington. And he brought Al up on stage, and I asked Al where he was from, and he said, Chihuahua. And I went, what? Never thought in a million years in San Diego I'd be talking to somebody from Chihuahua. And then, you know, fast forward, I think it was 2 or 3 years later, I moved up here. You then moved back here a couple of years after that into Spokane. We did a couple of charity events together, became closer as friends, and then, you know, you emceed my wedding and made it the most incredible experience that I could have ever imagined. And now we're sharing each other's lives. And it's so funny that it started, the two of us, you growing up here and me spending a significant amount of time in this area so close to each other, my aunt being your art teacher. Mm-hmm. And then we became friends, and today we're sitting in a really cool brewery that is not necessarily from here, but yet so connected to the DNA of Chihuahua and the surrounding areas. Yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like every time I drive through Chihuahua, there's always this kind of excitement, right? I believe I had, you know, a pretty damn good childhood, you know? And I think at the time I may not have felt the same because a lot of it was work. When I was out here working on a dairy farm in Addy was, you know, a lot of it was physical labor, but then a lot of it was also a lot of fun. I had my brother that was here, and he was older, and so I always wanted to hang out with him. But he was really responsible for taking me around to different places. So driving through here, there's just a lot of like genuinely healthy, you know, memories. Details sometimes slip my mind, but in general, it's like, holy crap, like I spent a lot of my youth here, and it's exciting to go around. And the truth is, like, I want to spend more of my adult life here. But I do find myself just driving up here and hitting dirt roads just to, I don't know, there's a certain energy that's in the area, you know, that reminds you of your, you know, younger years.
Yeah, it's interesting how little the distance we've set up shop in life from a pivot point like Chihuahua or Addy.
Yeah.
I can't leave Washington State. Like I've considered it many times, and there's just something in the air and something in my being that kind of draws me back. When you're coming down the hill into Chihuahua, like still to this day, coming down that Chihuahua and seeing the valley, there's an emotion that comes up, and so many memories, so many life lessons, so many relationships, so many summers, so many bad decisions, so many relatively good decisions. Yeah. It's great because as well, like Chihuahua aesthetically there's a few good roads, but like there's also some really gnarly looking spots, right? In Chihuahua. It's a reflection of how much personal relationship matters and how little aesthetic matters. It's kind of like food, right? Like you can get really good food wherever. It doesn't need to be in a fancy restaurant on the east side. It can be in the, you know, weird Vietnamese restaurant on Sprague in Spokane. I noticed that the older I get coming back to Chihuahua as well. It's like, oh yeah, there's like soul, like real soul can be found anywhere.
I mean, for me, it's more like heavily rooted, right? So there's a connection from like years and years or decades and whatever of family that's lived in the area. And then just like, you know, remembering meals I've had
What's your favorite meal that you've had? Like remembering meals that came out of that farm.
Biscuits and gravy were insane. I've just, to this day, I've never had biscuits and gravy the way that my grandmother was making it. I mean, it was milk from our dairy cows, fresh out of the tank, still warm before, you know, the trucks came in and pumped it out. Butter and fat used from the animals, steer, or for that matter, old bulls that were then processed and used as the family to utilize. Not the best for a steak, but great ground and put into a gravy. And I've never been able to match that flavor, like even with all of my training. I mean, maybe if I was to go onto the farm, in which they don't have a dairy production program anymore, but maybe recreate those. But even then, I just think about like all of my grandmothers who were phenomenal cooks. I don't know if I could ever really recreate. I don't know if they're like sneaky, like under the carpet, like this is what the real recipe is, but I told you it was this. Or it's just the environment that you're in, right? And so I think that's where like this becomes very connected from a root standpoint of this is where I am at, this is where my family is at, and the only way that I'm gonna have this feeling, this taste, this memory is by connecting the two. So yeah, I mean, majority of my experience in this environment is been really centered around work and family and land, which is pretty incredible.
I wrote an entire record up at Waits Lake. I'm gonna get the age wrong. It would have been 2013, so I would have been 26 years old. I was living in Seattle. I decided on a mushroom trip that I was gonna move back to Chewelah and build a studio. And so I convinced my parents, who have a cabin up at Waits Lake, which is, it's 15 minutes from here, to let me take one of the rooms up there and build a studio. And I wrote my first major label record that I ever, it was my first like proper budget to make an album.
Yeah.
I made it up there. Songs like Love Where You're At and Circle, Fake Future. I wrote a song in that cabin called I Know That I Wasn't Right, which is like a really meaningful song in my life.
I didn't spend a lot of time in my older years here, but Chautauqua days.
Yeah!
Chautauqua days were rad. I remember scooping ice cream out of a truck with my aunt, Robin. And I'm pretty sure it was the first time I even heard the word carpal tunnel, which I don't believe I was old enough to even have that yet. But
Or say it. It's a lot of syllables.
Or say it, yeah. Carpal tunnel.
Carpal tunnel.
It's a lot, yeah. So
Cheers.
cheers. Thanks for taking us to this place.
Yo, this is the best.
Yeah, man, Chautauqua days were...
Chautauqua days. I have so many fond memories of Chautauqua days. We lived kind of right around the corner from Chautauqua, so I could walk down to Chautauqua. And it was the first time in my life where I was able to have a curfew past 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Rode the zipper far too many times, threw up at least once. But same thing, like coming back to that, like the imprinted memories in life that like I can see the lights, I can feel the baseball diamond off to the right from Chautauqua and the whistling, probably like PC, but there was a band called the Whistling Midgets each year that would come and play Chautauqua. I can hear them playing.
The local tribes playing their handmade instruments.
Right.
Always very like, the different like garb, the clothing.
Totally.
All of it was just, and the music.
Yeah, the music was cool every year. I mean, yeah, there's I guess ultimately it's a joy, really, and a blessing to be able to have a life lived where coming back somewhere brings happiness.
Yeah.
And I think that for me personally, and I see it, you know, in your experience in this area as well, that's the case, which is such a privilege and a joy, regardless of, you know, what your perspective is the older you get, to have the capability of emotionally coming back to a pinpoint is a joy.
Yeah.
What's great about this place is that my vehicles were fixed in this building. I had a Toyota Tercel,
Nice.
a 93 that I bought off Lonnie Hoxie. It used to be owned by Randy Dollar. Yep. I grew up with Randy in church, and he owned this auto mechanic spot. Jake and Pat bought it from him and flipped it into this beautiful space that you see now. It's really like what I feel deeply connected with. Patrick and Jake had started brewing beer out of their rental and like bringing it over to our house, and we would like check it out. Oh, this is nice, you know? And to see them take an idea and a vision and a dream and bring it into a space like this.
And make it still feel like very part of Chihuahua.
And making it feel like it has definitely been grown. It's like a homegrown thing. But also the execution of it feeling as being as good as anywhere else you would experience this this sort of thing. One of my favorites, which I found later in life. I had to move back to Chihuahua in my 20s to find it, but the Oasis Tavern, which I'm very excited for you to experience the Oasis. The flat top grill at the Oasis, shipped from Pennsylvania, pre-World War I. They've been cooking burgers on this biatch. Scraping it, dude. And Terry has owned this bar for 27 years. I've gone far and wide. I'm a burger man. Have yet to have a better one. Sporty's is an icon in Chihuahua. It is essentially where every human being who has graduated from Jenkins High School comes to Chautauqua Days if they're old enough to get in. I remember like coming back after high school, and I just turned 21. And I was like, dude, I'm going to Sporty's. My friend Jesse George owns Sporty's, incredible chef.
I feel like I've always like tried to search for where things were most important for me because of being asked the question, like what's most important in your life. Mm-hmm. But I feel like you don't recognize that until you're in a room by yourself.
Yeah, true.
Or until you're like walking through something that reminds you of an experience that you want to relive
right
over and over and over again.
Yeah, so
I feel like that's you know, in a lot of ways that's here. Mm-hmm. It's Spokane, it's here, it's like you say, music, it's food. You know, we have these cravings of like, I don't know, Zips hasn't been around for a long time here.
Dude, Zips is...
But I think it's like one of the only Zips that actually serves breakfast.
When Zips moved to town, let me tell you, the greatest thing that has ever happened in the achievement of chain restaurants, when I was in second grade, McDonald's came to town. I remember moving into town and going through the drive-thru at McDonald's and thinking, this is city living. I just got I got a Happy Meal.
Put on your new boots, boys.
Right here, dude, I'm city living. We were living out in the country and we moved into town. Maybe the greatest thing that Chihuahua has ever achieved is Zips moved to town 15 years ago. McDonald's went out of business.
Later.
When I was growing up in Chihuahua, coffee was not a signature of my diet. I came back to Chihuahua, like I said, in my 20s. And one of my closest friends ever owned a coffee shop in town, which is no longer in existence. The positive and negative about a small town like Chihuahua is that if something sticks around, it means it's really, really good. And the owners of that establishment have a commitment to the community. The balance of that is that it's hard to like have positive earnings in a small town with, 1,100 people. There's not a ton
You
of
have
people.
to earn the love and respect of every person that lives in this
Absolutely. Like if businesses survive in a town like Chihuahua, it's because the community goes, we're going to make it a point to support these establishments because we want them to stick around.
I mean, for me at this moment, I have things that are memories to this area that we're in, and you have things that are different memories. And we're able to talk about those and learn about things I had never even known about this area. That's really exciting. And so like we continue to talk about like what is edible. Edible is identifying a region and the relationships that helped grow the region to what it is today. And we're just a microscopic part of that, but it's helped grow to where we're at today. So like this is an incredible experience. It's a pretty cool drive down memory lane.
It's super cool. And also worth highlighting. I won't speak to my taste, but Chef Chad is seeming like I've had the greatest meals of my life at his house. And there's an incredible dialogue and story to be told behind that meal and experience.
Mezcal.
It's a lot of mezcal. But for readers, for people interested in food and experience, I think highlighting Chef Chad and his experience in life is really beneficial. For as many places and experiences that we've been able to have, there's something incredibly special about like the community you can touch, the portions and the corners of the garden that you can actually water. And regardless of how far our reach is, regardless of how many folk you can touch outside of your community, like the real the nourishing aspects of life come from your home.
Cheers.